The room is silent except for the sound of hunger. A child clutches his mother's arm, the blanket barely covering them from the cold. His whisper slices through the darkness, a fragile promise. His mother doesn't reply, only tightens her. Embrace. Two broken souls, clinging to tomorrow's hope. After that night of hunger, the camera shifts to the woman who carried the weight of both parent and provider. Charles's mother walks home in the dark, shoes worn thin, her hands scarred from endless labor. She works 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to earn a few coins that barely hold life together. Yet no matter how broken she feels, she always sets a piece of bread on the table for her son, even if it means she goes without. She never complains, never asks for thanks. Her silence is louder than any words, a language of sacrifice Charles learns before he learns numbers. He watches her, fight battles the world never applauds, and deep inside he swears he'll make her sacrifices count. In her weary eyes, he finds the first spark of strength that keeps him moving forward. The nights were colder than the mornings, yet Charles's eyes burned with a strange fire. On the cracked floor beside his mother, he held a stub of a pencil and an old notebook with missing pages. While other children drifted into sleep, he filled the silence with sketches of shops, delivery routes, and names of companies that didn't exist yet. His mother lay beside him, exhausted, her hands trembling from long shifts. She watched him draw, her heart split in two, pride for his courage, fear that life would crush his fragile hopes. To her, these scribbles were not just drawings. They were escapes, fragile wings carved inside broken walls. Sometimes she would close her eyes and whisper a prayer, not for riches, but for his dreams to survive the weight of reality. And in that dim room, filled with hunger and hope, Charles unknowingly began designing the empire that would one day change both of their lives. Morning light brought no comfort to Charles. At school, his shoes were the first thing they noticed, cracked soles stitched by his mother's tired hands. Laughter followed him through corridors, cruel voices mocking the boy who dared to dream while looking so poor. His classmates bragged about the newest video games, the flashy sneakers their parents bought. But when Charles opened his mouth, it wasn't about games or shoes. He spoke of businesses, of building something greater, of changing the world. His words were met not with applause but ridicule. "Who would trust you with a company?" they sneered. The sting of their laughter clung to him long after the day ended. At home, he collapsed into silence. His mother, sensing his pain, defended him fiercely to neighbors who whispered he was just chasing clouds. But when she looked at him, even her heart trembled. She worried the world's cruelty would break the fragile boy who had already seen too much. Yet in the corner of her fear lived a spark, a hope that perhaps his defiance was not foolishness, but destiny. The rejection letter was short, but its weight was unbearable. Charles had begged for work, any work, but the door slammed, shut once again. That evening he stormed home, eyes red, voice shaking. He collapsed onto the floor, fists clenched, whispering through tears, "I'm not enough, Mama, I'll never be enough." His mother dropped beside him, her own body weary but her spirit unbroken. She cupped his face in her calloused hands, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me, Charles, failure is not your destiny. You were not born to be forgotten." Her words cut deeper than the rejection. For the first time, he saw himself not as the world labeled him, but as she believed him to be. That night, the boy who once dreamed in silence made a vow. He would rise no matter how many doors closed. The market was alive with noise, vendors shouting prices, carts rattling over stones. But amid the chaos, Charles's ears caught a different sound. 2 well-dressed men arguing over deliveries. "They charge too much and they're always late," one snapped. The words struck him like lightning. His heart pounded. What if there was a way cheaper, faster, reliable? He stood frozen, replaying the complaint in his mind. The idea wasn't polished, but it was real. A seed planted in the soil of his struggles. He raced home, nearly tripping, on the uneven road, clutching the thought like treasure. Bursts of breath trembling with excitement, he poured it out to his mother, a service anyone could afford, run with honesty. She listened, tears glistening in her tired eyes. With a faint smile, she whispered one word that became permission, blessing, and command all at once. "Try." The idea had no investors, no savings, no starting capital. All Charles had was desperation and an old bicycle borrowed from a neighbor who had long stopped using it. Its chain rattled with every turn, the seat torn, the tires thin. But to Charles, it was not a relic. It was his first delivery truck. Day after day he pedaled through heat and rain, balancing packages strapped with rope, knocking on doors with a nervous smile. Every coin earned felt like gold, every satisfied customer like a victory no one else could see. But with each ride came exhaustion. His legs ached, his clothes soaked with sweat, his stomach still often empty. At night he dragged himself home, body broken but spirit alight. And there she was, his mother standing at the doorway waiting. Her eyes carried two storms at once, the fear of him collapsing and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, her son was onto something greater. Those nights were the beginning. No office, no staff, no trucks, just a boy, a bicycle, and a mother's unwavering gaze holding him together. For weeks Charles delivered in silence, unknown, unnoticed, just another boy on a rusty bicycle. But then came a turning point. One customer, a shopkeeper who had tested many delivery boys before, watched Charles arrive drenched in rain yet still carrying the package safely, every item intact. When offered extra money for the trouble, Charles shook his head. "I promised the price, that's all I'll take." The man was stunned. In a world where honesty was rare, this boy's word shone brighter than the goods he carried. The shopkeeper told his friends, and soon whispers spread across the market. "Call the boy with the bicycle. He never cheats, never fails." Calls began pouring in. Charles struggled to keep pace, his legs screaming, his nights shrinking, but his heart alive with fire. Each knock on a customer's door was more than a delivery. It was proof that the world had begun to see him. At home, his mother noticed the difference. He still stumbled through the door exhausted, but his eyes carried light. She smiled quietly, knowing that recognition, no matter how small, was enough fuel to keep her son moving against the tide. The nights belonged to Charles. While the world lay wrapped in dreams, he pedaled under flickering streetlights, his shadow, stretching across empty roads. Each package felt heavier than its weight because it carried his future, his promise to his mother. His body begged for rest, but sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford. Back home, another battle unfolded. His mother sat hunched over a small sewing machine, stitching uniforms late into the night. Her eyes burned, her fingers bled. Yet she never complained. The hum of the machine became the soundtrack to their sacrifice, blending with the faint rattle of Charles's bicycle chain as he returned. Two souls, trapped in poverty, yet bound by the same fragile vision, poured their strength into different corners of the night. When their paths met at dawn, his weary knock, her tired smile, it was clear. They were not just surviving. They were building something greater, stitch by stitch, mile by mile. Success had begun to taste sweet. Orders multiplied. And Charles could finally share the load with a trusted friend, a boy he considered a brother. Together they dreamed of growing bigger, faster. But in the quiet corners of ambition, betrayal was waiting. One morning, Charles noticed fewer calls. Customers, who once praised him, now vanished. Confused, he searched for answers, only to discover the unthinkable. His friend had stolen his client list, offering the same service under a new name. Overnight, half of Charles's fragile empire collapsed. The bicycle still stood at his side, but the weight on his shoulders was heavier than ever. That evening, he dragged himself home, unable to meet his mother's eyes. His voice cracked as he confessed, "I trusted him, Mama." And he took everything. The shame was deeper than the loss. For the first time in months, Charles felt like the boy mocked for dreaming, small, broken, betrayed. Charles sat in silence, the betrayal echoing louder than any street noise outside. His fists trembled, his head bowed low, waiting for his mother's disappointment, maybe even her anger, but she didn't raise her voice. She walked to him slowly, her steps heavy with years of struggle, and knelt beside him. Her calloused hands lifted his face, forcing his tear-stained eyes to meet hers. She spoke softly, yet every word carried the weight of truth. Listen, Charles. They can steal your clients, they can even steal your money, but they cannot steal your fire. In that moment, the boy who had nearly given up felt his chest ignite again. Her words reminded him of the nights she had worked, the bread she had sacrificed, the strength she had carried alone. He realized his empire wasn't built on clients. It was built on grit, on honesty, on faith. And as long as his fire burned, nothing was truly lost. The fire his mother lit inside him became fuel for a new vision. Charles wiped his tears and returned to work, but this time with sharper eyes and a stronger will. He studied the complaints of customers, not to dwell on betrayal, but to find solutions. With borrowed books and free tutorials, he taught himself technology. Soon, his small service transformed. He built a simple system that allowed faster orders, quicker tracking, and cheaper costs. What once took hours now took minutes. Word spread again, but this time it wasn't just about honesty. It was about efficiency. Customers returned, and new ones followed. Investors, once blind to the boy on a rusty bicycle, now leaned in with curiosity. His bicycle fleet doubled, then tripled, until 2 wheels turned into 4, trucks bearing his name rolling through the city streets. The nights of hunger didn't vanish overnight, but slowly each delivery carried him further from poverty, closer to progress. Years passed, and the boy with a rusty bicycle became a man whose name echoed in boardrooms. No longer did Charles drift to sleep on a cracked floor. Now silk sheets wrapped him in comfort. Yet every night before closing his eyes, he still remembered the cold nights beside his mother, her arms shielding him from hunger and despair. Inside his sprawling mansion, walls gleamed with success, but one rule remained unshaken. At the grand dining table lined with polished silver and crystal, only one seat truly mattered. He would not sit until his mother took her place at the head, the throne she had earned with every scar, every sacrifice, every night she stitched hope into his future. For the world, he was a billionaire. For himself, he was still that boy whose empire had been built on a mother's strength. Charles's voice lingers over fading images of his journey, the hunger, the bicycle, the mansion. The world measured me by my hunger, but my mother measured me by my promise. If sacrifice has shaped your dreams, this channel is your story too. Subscribe. Tomorrow's victory may carry your name.